let me ask you, Brian. So, what do you think of Backlash?
No Mercy.
No Mercy.
No Mercy. Yeah. I thought it was really good until Enzo came out, and then I thought that match was just atrocious. And then I thought the main event was a huge letdown. It was kind of like one of those old WCW shows where they would have this great undercard, and then they have a terrible main event. And so the show's over, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, the show sucked." It's like, well, it didn't suck. I mean, your last memory was a bad main event, but it was actually a good show until then. That's kind of how I felt about No Mercy.
Bro, but I don't understand. Okay, we get it. You're trying to bury Enzo. But why do you continue? Why would you kick the guy in the nuts, make him do a heel move, and just continue to bury him, and not even give him one move in the match? The only move he made was actually a great move, that DDT from the top.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yep.
That was great, But that's all he did. What's going on? And again, they're just trying to, teach somebody humility, or what's going on over there?
No, I mean they gave him the belt.
Right.
I mean,
okay, look at how they gave it to him.
I think they think that he's very charismatic, and he gets a reaction every time he comes out, and they know he sucks in the ring.
Right.
And so, I think they think they're going to get him over like Eddie Guerrero's old lie, cheat, steal gimmick.
Right.
Like they know he can't work, so they figure, okay, well, we'll have him, everybody will go in there, and they'll beat him up for 9 minutes, and then he'll get some sort of fluke win and retain the title via lie, cheat, steal, whatever, get a big pop for it, and that's how they're going to get him over.
Right, so he's like a victim of his own success. He's one of these guys that.
If I'm in the right,
let me just say one thing. He's one of the typical bookers that looks at people, and Scott Hall used to be in this role because he's actually the guy that brought this terminology up to me. He goes, "It didn't matter how many times you beat me, I still stayed over." You know what I'm saying? And I think that's how they look at Enzo.
Well,
I look at it differently.
Yeah.
I've watched a couple 205 live shows.
Right.
And the one thing Enzo could do, and this is what he's done on Raw. Raw's a 3-hour show.
Right.
Like, they need to use Enzo for something, so he goes out there and talks. I mean, the guy can carry TV time, okay? And what that show needs, what 205 Live needs, they need somebody to carry TV. You know what I'm saying? So like fill time with carry angles, build other guys because he can talk. You know what I'm saying? Like build angles and stuff because he's not a great worker, but he does good TV. You know, with the mic. And I think that's what they think they need on that show because like a lot of those guys on 205 just come off as so wooden, in their promos and stuff and everything, and they're wondering why they're not getting over. It's like maybe they're out there killing themselves and doing all the acrobatic stuff, but it's just that they're not really getting over. It's because they can't talk.
Yeah.
Well, I figure we'll take somebody that can talk. Go ahead.
Let me say one thing about that. So, did you watch the whole Cruiserweight Classic?
No, I didn't. No.
Okay. So, the Cruiserweight Classic was off. It was not overseen by Vince. It was not overseen by Kevin Dunn. It was like a Triple H thing that they did down at Full Sail. And before all of the matches, they had these video packages with all of these guys. And they were all good. They were all really good. And like the problem is it's not that the guys can't talk. It's that those guys can't do this weird WWE deal where we have one guy that writes a bunch of stupid promos for everybody. They all sound the same. They got to deliver their lines exactly as – I mean, it's so fake and phony. Yeah, they can't do it. And they got one guy, Enzo, that can. And so I guess they've decided he's the guy. But, I mean, it's very much like Apollo Crews. Like when Apollo Crews first debuted in NXT – like his first few promos were great, but then they had him do the WWE, here's your script, here's what we want you to say, here's your character, go out there and recite this stupid stuff. And now his promos are like terrible. His promos are hideous. I mean, you're right in the sense that they want a guy that can bring that life to NXT, but I don't like blaming the guys because I've seen the guys actually do good promos. They just can't do it the way that they want it on the main roster.
Brian, it baffles me that a place that, lets so many great talkers talk do this, because when you talk about writing corny shit, look at that poor guy Jordan, bro. After his match, they wrote him some corny nuts shit, and the people just booed him.
Yep, it was terrible.
He's finished.
And I'm sure that guy probably could cut a promo if he needed to. I'm sure most of the locker room. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody in the locker room is a great promo, But if you let everybody go out there and like sink or swim a little bit, maybe cut some promos on house shows or whatever, get some experience just talking and improvising and this sort of thing, I mean, you'd have better talkers. I mean, historically, the promotions that let the guys go out there and have freedom, I mean, they had better promo guys because the guys went out there and they learned how to do a promo. I mean, instead, you've got a bunch of wrestlers that they're trying to turn into actors, but they have no acting coach, they have no acting classes, they have nothing like that. It's just like, practice this stupid promo here, read it word for word, and good luck, and, you know, maybe we'll do a couple of takes. This one's the least shitty, so that's the one we'll use. I mean, how are people going to get any better at this? I mean, a lot of pro wrestling is improv, and you're not giving the guys the opportunity to do that. They just have to go out there and read these scripts, and it sucks.
Right, and the thing is, this is what they should know by now. Yeah, it's a different era where most of the guys that are coming into the business don't have the experience that you had back in the day. You know, like when I first walked into any locker room in Mexico or the United States, like everybody in the dressing room was over 30 years old. You know what I'm saying? And it's a very younger generation now that maybe don't have that experience, but you don't need to overproduce everybody. You figure out who you need to produce and write shit for. You figure out who you don't, and then you work with those people until you get them to a point where they can work on their own. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but even like, to me, even the guys that can't cut a promo and you've got to write stuff for them, I mean, every now and then you got to not write stuff for them. I mean, they got to go out there and fail. Like, right. You watch these old territorial shows and you have some blow away awesome promos, and you have some guys that suck. But right. They're still out there every week sucking, and eventually they get better. And I think that part of the thing is, like, WWE doesn't want guys go out there and totally sucking and failing at these promos, but I don't think they understand that the scripted promos are just as shitty. They're just a different kind of terrible.
Didn't this start with when Stephanie took over creative?
It's been a long time. I want
to know when the genesis, when the genesis of, okay, stick to the script promos started in the WWE. How long ago?
Yo, Disco. So Russo didn't write for nobody, right?
No, he wrote promos, but like he absolutely gave people the freedom to change whatever. You know,
yeah,
like,
right.
It
so
wasn't
it was
like
after Russo.
Right. What I'm understanding is from what I've heard from guys, and guys have been let go from there, is that they tell you to stick to the script. I want to know when that started.
I think it dates back to the early to mid 2000s, when after ECW and WCW died, and a lot of those guys didn't get jobs with WWE. I mean, the business really did change, because you went from companies where new guys would come in that had been somewhere else. WCW would get guys from ECW and WWF, and WWF would get guys from WCW and ECW and Indies and this and that and wherever. And the territorial system, where a guy would leave one territory and go into another one. Now, in the early 2000s, when all of those big companies died and there was only one, they had to get people out of their own developmental system. And if you remember during that period, like, how many times did we say, oh, well, so-and-so got called up too early. So-and-so got called up too early. So they called up everybody too early. And the guys that they called up too early, they didn't have experience cutting promos. And so it became a situation where, well, you know, you're not very good at promos, so, okay, we'll write one for you. Just like, here's your promo, go practice it, and then come out on TV here and do it. And I think that's where the whole ball started rolling, where that's the way they wanted it to be done, and it's just blown up from there.
But there's not one person you could point to as that being their idea?
I mean,
Triple H, or
it may very well have been Stephanie when she took over creative, because prior to that, I mean, they didn't really have creative. It was like they had a few bookers.
Well, they need to put that idea to rest, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Mick Foley has said in his book that guys like himself and Austin and Flair used to get their promos from Steph, and if they kind of said, well, I wouldn't say that, or I don't agree with that, or blah, blah, that Steph would get pissed at them, or they would be afraid to hurt her feelings. But that makes me think that it kind of started with her.
Well, there you go.
What do you think about Jordan, bro? I think he's very athletic and has a ton of potential. And I just feel that, tell me if you think I'm wrong on this. Are people not connecting with him because they know he's not really Angle's son? What's going on here? Because there is zero connection here.
Well, I mean, that's Dave's theory, and I mean, he may be right. I mean, and the idea in 2017 that you're doing a storyline where we're supposed to believe that this guy,
Yeah, exactly. And I know it's absurd.
it's absolutely stupid. But
That's awesome.
I mean, at the same time, it's. I mean, that's a big part of it. But I mean, you got to remember that in NXT when Jason Jordan was coming up, it was like the same situation. He was a great athlete, but he wasn't getting over. And it wasn't until they put him with Gable, who had like a ton of charisma but was small, that together they were a great unit. And Gable was able to bring the personality out of Jordan to a degree. And it made him like they were such a great act in NXT. And then as usual, they got called up to the main roster and they just got beaten right and left and nobody cared about him. And then they split him up. And so right now, Jason Jordan is right back where he was when he began. So, you know, whether he was Kurt Angle's son or not, I mean, he's not great at doing his promos, and he's a great wrestler, but I mean, what else is there to connect to the crowd? He goes out there and he loses all the time. I mean, he is losing to guys like Cena and everything like that, but he's still going out there and losing. And to the WWE audience, when you're a new guy and you're going out there and you don't get a lot of promo time and you lose, I mean, you're a geek. That's just the way they look at you. And so there's a lot of things going against him.